Hello, everybody. This is Maria here sharing from the Aguaswas Mountains, Ohlone Territory in Santa Cruz, California. My original ancestral lands is Central Mexico, Jalisco. I was born and raised in Cihuateotl, Jalisco. And I have been coming here to Santa Cruz since I was 5 years old. And my full name is Maria Ascensión Ramos Bracamontes. And I want to take a moment to honor Mother Earth all around me. I have the honor and the privilege to live immersed in redwood trees, cedar trees, a lot of birds, a little closer to the sky, but also to the land, and the ocean is very close. Yeah, I just want to take a moment to honor all the elements and all my ancestors that live in every cell of my body, my heart, and my womb. And thank you to my plant relatives, and specifically as they are my biggest allies. And I want to open today by pulling a card from this deck, this oracle deck. It's called Earth Warriors. I will show you the front cover. It's right here. It is written by Alana Fairchild, and it's a new deck to me, but it's gorgeous and it's really helpful. And the card that I got is Abuelita Medicine, Remedy of the Grandmothers. And you see a peyote and la muerte right there, and plants. Thank you. Thank you, everybody that's joining today. And thank you, Rhonda, so much for this invitation. It's a great honor to share my story. Although I say it's just the beginning of my true midwifery journey. Okay, I'll get started, Rhonda. I brought some photos to share with you to guide my storytelling. And in full transparency, it was incredibly hard to do this. I've been looking forward to this talk for a very long time. But as the time got closer, it just got harder and harder to get myself to not only gather images, but also organize my thoughts. And I just thought that I would just go and share straight from the heart, whatever came up today. You know, it was what was needed. It was for a reason. And so I want to start this story by showing you an image of mugwort. Mugwort that grows here in Santa Cruz along the San Lorenzo River. As I think plants have been what have been my mothers and grandmothers and mentors and teachers in this journey without my physical mother and physical grandparents. Yeah, it's been the most beautiful journey, knowing that I'm not alone. I will show you a photo of my mother. So my mother was born in a town called Villegas, Jalisco, which is only, say, 20 miles away from where I was born in Cihuateotl. And my mother is the eldest. And you see her in the middle. She's holding the little baby, and she's holding yeah, she's holding a little baby, and then her siblings and I think a friend are around her. Um, her name was Ermelinda Bracamontes, and her mother's name is Rosario de Aro, and her father's name is Juan Bracamontes, and they lived in the countryside. Even when you visit now, homes are made out of adobe. Um, they still don't have pavement. It's still just dirt roads. I remember I was in my elementary school years when electricity was introduced there. So I have a lot of memories of coming to visit them and living around the natural cycles of the day and the night, and also using the fire, just using all the natural ways of heating and cooling and bathing in the river, washing in the river, gathering with community. I will share also about my mother's, brief journey. She died when I was 7 years old, and I do not have many memories of her, and I don't know many stories about her. It's as if it's too painful to talk about her life, her existence. And unfortunately, most of my relatives don't live near. I don't have much contact with a lot of relatives. So I don't really have many people to tell me stories or that, willingly share stories. So a lot of who she is my few experiences that I had with her, and what I know of her. So it was very typical, I think, around the world in small communities for women to be stolen uh, by the person that they ended up having kids with, because it's not like they ever dated. It's just like they probably just like looked, like exchanged looks, and maybe there was an attraction, and then at some point it was somehow understood, or if the man approached the woman, and the woman wanted to like escape their home life with their family, they would just go. They would run away. He would take her to, like, if he was from another town, he would go there, or just somewhere else, and very often here to the United States. My mom was the eldest, and she had a lot of siblings, so it was it was very common that the woman, and I'm saying man and woman because that back then that was a language that was used, and it's just to simplify. I apologize, don't want to offend anyone. But yeah, so my mother was stolen by my father. They went to my father's town, which is where I was born, and of course quickly began having children. um, my abuelita Chayo, her mother, she knew a lot about birth because her husband, abuelito Juan, his mother, and I believe that they were from another state, and I do not know exactly where he was from. He his mother was a midwife, and and just to say, very few people actually called themselves midwives or parteras or even curanderas. It was just like the wise women, or like the elders, or really just the women who were nearby who had already given birth. They were the ones attending birth. They were the ones that were being called. So my grandpa's mother, she was known to attend births, and in the countryside, you transportation happens by foot and by donkey and by horse. and occasionally by bus, or even rarely you can ask a ride and someone can take you in a truck. And so when my abuelita got together with my grandpa, she also got to go to births to different towns and in the same town. And that's how my abuelita learned birth. But I don't think she ever called herself a partera, but she was very wise. Even now, my memories of her, she died 7 years ago in 2013. But even when I remembered, or when I would visit her, she was one of those wise women who everyone would be so happy to greet, and they would come visit her. She would always share, everything that she had. My abuelita probably ate beans most of her life. Life in Mexico in the countryside was pretty basic. Just that most people just had their beans and their corn, not even so much rice, and not even so much dairy. That was like a treat. It was really beans and tortillas every day, and occasional vegetables and salsas. But yeah, my grandmother was very poor, but very, very graceful and very, very humble. And so when so yeah, my mother was very close to my abuelita because she was her eldest. And then when my mother, I actually don't even know if she ever got married, but when she started having kids with my uh, dad, she would always come back to see mi abuelita, and my abuelita would help her with her first few births. It's I hear that my first three siblings died. I believe my mother had at least one stillbirth, and then another baby died a few days after birth, and I think the third one died within the year after birth. I'm unsure of the specific details, but I can only imagine what it feels like to have your first three children die. And of course, I do not remember because I am number 6 of the living children. So my mother gave birth 12 times in her life. So that just the way that that feels in my body and the way that it sounds in my mind and how I imagine, I just can't. I cannot imagine giving birth 12 times. I cannot imagine being pregnant 12 times and breastfeeding 9 times and having to tend to all the children, all the house chores, and the land and the animals that many times. So my mother was, like most Indigenous women, very, very hardworking, never rested, never took care of herself because there was always too much to do. Um, and so the story about my mother's death is that so she gave birth to us at home, the older ones. But when I was 5 years old, and I'm number 6, I have my oldest sister. She's around 52. Her name is Eva. And then I have my brother, Jose. He's around 50. And then I have my sister, Patti. And Patti also had children very young. She had her first baby at 13. And she was also stolen from actually here in Santa Cruz. And that was a really intense experience for me as a child, because in this country, you know, she was going to middle school. She was in 8th grade. So there were, you know, missing person signs all over town with her image. And although we kind of suspected she went with this guy that had liked her, we just couldn't find her. And it was very sad because this happened like about this happened around a year before my mom died. So my sister Patti never got to see my mom again, and she had a baby um, that never got to meet his grandma, and her son, he's now 33 years old. He's only a month older than my brother, who was born when my mother died. But and then the other story about my sister Patti is that she had a she had an amniotic embolism in the hospital. Her very last birth was around 7 years ago, and you know, she was 40 and she had a amniotic embolism, and that was a really big deal that she survived. And it happened here at the local hospital where she works. She serves food. She works in hospitality. She's one of the ladies that brings the food, does a food delivery in the hospital, and it's it's a really important story because at that hospital there's only been one amniotic embolism in the whole in 20 years, in a very long time, and that was my sister Patti who survived. And so she had 6 boys and she really wanted a girl, you know. You remember I was saying how she had her first baby at 13 and then her last baby at 40, and that's when she had the amniotic embolism. And but she's so proud of herself for finally having that girl that she really dreamed to have. So that's my sister Patti, and then I have my sister Chayo, who had 2 C-sections for various reasons, mostly because when I was a year after my mother died, when I was like 8, we had a car accident driving back to Mexico, and my sister Chayo, she was in a coma for 3 months. We weren't sure she was gonna make it. She had like 9 surgeries, so many broken bones, but she ended up having 2 beautiful children. And then after her is my brother Juan. He's just 2 years older than me, but he ran away at 13. You know, as I'm listening to myself share about my family, it's a lot about being stolen or running away. It's, you know, these big, you know, Mexican families. There's a lot of that happens when things are not working, or when there's no parents raising 9 children. And then it's me. And, you know, so we were all born at home in Ayotitlan. And then my sister Alicia, who is my little sister, she's only about 1.5 years younger than I, but I feel a lot older. And I definitely feel like there's a huge difference between my siblings who are older than me and siblings that are younger than me. I basically feel that because I was 7 when my mom died, I feel like I've had to parent the younger. My sister Alicia had 1 child, and she's a lot of the reason why I am very passionate about helping and working with and really bringing healing to women, to babies, to families, to the whole earth. On her own, just her alone, she's probably been through more trauma than, I don't want to say, you can't ever compare trauma. It's always devastating and awful. But she's been through a lot, and she's a lot of the reason why I chose to be a hospital, a CNM, a certified nurse midwife, and not the home birth not follow through with my home birth, the midwifery track, and I'll share about that a little bit more. But then she was the last one of us to be born in Mexico. When we came to the US in 85, and then one brother was born in the hospital here. Here you can see in this image is my 3 younger siblings and I. So, and this is our home in Mexico. This is where we lived with my mother. So my brother Angel was born here at the local hospital, vaginal delivery. But then soon after, my mom became pregnant with my little brother, Caesar, who's the little one here. And by that time, she had developed, I believe, gestational hypertension. I'm not sure, it could have been chronic. I really don't know much about my mom's life. But they had told her that she wanted to have, that she was going to need a C-section. And so this was in 1987. Yeah, my brother was born in 88, but that was one reason why we went back to Mexico. So we got here to the US in 85. We first arrived in Pescadero, which is a little bit north, Highway 1 north, and we worked in the Brussels sprout field along Highway 1 north. And then we moved here to Santa Cruz to the beach flats, which is a Mexican neighborhood. And if you've been to Santa Cruz or have heard of Santa Cruz, there's so many stereotypes of Santa Cruz, but no one ever thinks that there's this very strong Mexican community in the 80s and 90s and even 2000s, and even now there has been a lot of violence, gang violence, drug use, and we were there. My aunts and uncles, my dad, not only was my whole family involved in selling drugs and leading gangs, but also there's a big substance use problem in my whole family. Anyway, my mom did not like it here. She wanted to go back to Mexico. She'd rather be poor but have space. We were in a studio, all of us, in a studio, and we had to hide from La Migra. We had to hide from the police. We had to hide from landlords. We had to hide from white people. It was just so stressful. We lived off of looking for back then there's a lot more places that gave food away, like the food pantries and clinics, things. It was a little bit easier to have access, but you never got treated with much respect. And we didn't know English, and we're from the countryside, so we didn't know how to be in a city. So there's so many reasons why my mom just got over it, and so we left. She was pregnant with my brother Cesar, and we left. And I think that it was very special to be back home. We appreciated what we had. Sometimes we don't appreciate things till they're gone. And I remember when we went back, we were super happy because, we did bring a few savings. And so we were able to fix up our house. Like you can see in that image, we had a little, we were able to paint our home, and we had a floor, a nicer floor. And yeah, I have a few good memories. But what I'll share now is the day that I found out my mom died was, so in our small town, we didn't have a car back then. So you know, a couple times a week, probably like around once a week, we would, or someone, it was too many of us. So I rarely ever I was rarely chosen to be the one to go to the pueblo. The nearest bigger pueblo where there was a mercado was at Tecolotlan. Um, but it was always exciting when someone went because, you know, we would get nicer food or like treats like candy or something. So I remember it was a Saturday morning because Saturday mornings we would deep clean our home, which took all day long. And I remember I was my sister Chayo who was chosen that time to go with my mom. And so my dad, oh, I forgot to mention my dad earlier. He hasn't been very present in my life. That's probably why. But so my dad, he mostly was up here working in different places, but he was with us. He was in Mexico with us. You know, my mom was getting close to her due date. And so my mom and my dad and my sister Chayo went to El Pueblo, and she must have had a prenatal visit or something like that because she never came back. um, so I remember my dad came back like later in the afternoon without my mom. It was just him and my sister and like bags of things. And I just remember I think actually he must have, so what happened was that he went to a pueblo and he came back and he said, oh, you know, the doctors thought that, you know, your mom should stay overnight so that we can, you know, just it'll be safer if she stays overnight. And I think what happened was it was the next day when he came back. It was a Saturday because I remember we were cleaning, and that's when my dad told us that my mom died. And it was just such a surreal moment because you know, when you're expecting a baby, it's supposed to be a happy time. um and we were just so happy to be back home. And you know, we were able to like fix our home up and we were cleaning. And I will never forget my oldest sister Eva, you know, because we were all in different parts of the house and also like the front yard. We were all cleaning different parts, and the music was very loud. And also there's like a little stream between our home and then another street, and there's like a store. And I just remember my sister Eva screaming so loud, um like yeah, like instant wailing. And then I just remember like because I was kind of near like I was towards where the store, and there was people because a lot of, you know, men and horses would stand there and drink all day. And I remember all of them just like turning to look at us or our way. And my sister Eva, um she was the oldest. She was 18, I was 7, and we were all like 2 years apart. And my sister Eva was not okay for a very long time. Um, but and I didn't really know, most of us didn't really know what happened, and we never really asked. It wasn't till more recent, actually, when I started nursing school, that I was asked one of my sisters, hey, where's my mother's death certificate? And that's how I found out that my mother died of a pulmonary embolism, which, you know, can happen when you have hypertension. Anyway, this story is really important to me because I'm so grateful we were in Mexico when she died. Although maybe she wouldn't have died if we were closer to a hospital here. Who knows? Only, you know, only her spirit and creator and everyone else knows why it happened the way it happened. But the blessings and the gifts and the wisdom that I received from my mother's death was that she had the most beautiful death ceremony. It was a 9-day event. We were able to bring the body home, and we grieved for 9 days. And I can't wait to one day be able to ask again, what happened, like who organized it, and it's a tradition that we have in Mexico, and I'm sure it's an indigenous tradition. But yeah, so we brought, well, my mother's body was brought home, and it was very sweet because in that room where her body was being honored for 9 days is where she gave birth to most, or to a lot of us, a lot of her children. So that's a very, very special place in her home in Mexico. We still have her home. No one is using it right now, but that home is still there. And it was 9 days of grieving where the whole town and my abuelita's town, all my aunts and uncles from here, from the US, came down. My mother was so kind of like my abuelita. She was very loved. My mother was very tough, different than my abuelita. My abuelita was more gentle and soft. My mom was rough. She was tough, and she was big, and she was strong. Um, and she also, was a helper of women. We always had women coming and staying with us or asking us for stuff. And so, yeah, our home was always full of people, full of flowers, full of food and music. And on the 9th day, we walked to the cemetery together, and we had a very special burial for her. And I think that without that ability to honor her for so long, and like I was sharing with my sister Eva, she was like on the floor weeping. And because my mother was the eldest, a lot of her younger siblings, it was the same thing. They were just out of control, crying, till they couldn't, and till there's nothing else to like release, or till the tears were gone. I feel like that was just so healing for my whole family and my whole community. The only thing I will say that was a little challenging is that with intentions of taking care of us children, sometimes they would say, "Oh, you want to go ride horses or go, do something," and and so they wanted us. I wasn't there sometimes. Also, um maybe I've always been a caretaker, but just witnessing everyone crying and witnessing everything, I remember just like not being able to cry. I was just kind of like absorbing it all, and just like I would look at her body, and it was just so surreal. And it just couldn't process it very quickly. But I'm so grateful for that experience of having been able to spend so much time with her body. Unfortunately, they did not sew her up after the emergency C-section. So there's a lot of bleeding. There was a lot of, we had buckets collecting all the blood, but we still honored her for 9 days. My younger brother says that he was alive. I don't know. I'm not sure if the C-section happened after she died, and I don't know if my brother says that experience being in the womb with inside his dead mother. I really don't know those details. I'm sure he knows, and his whole life story started in a very sad way, and it's still very sad. He's not able to be in this country with us. He was deported, and so he's currently in a rehab in south of Baja, the most southern point of Baja. And that's another story. But yeah, my mother died during childbirth. Um, and I think that for most of my life, I just didn't really know how to feel, what to think. It was kind of just like this thing that happened a long time ago, and no one talked about it. And ever since, just I think all of us have just been on survival mode. Um, I ended up raising my sibling, and it was kids raising kids. And soon after Cesar, the younger, I actually officially became his guardian when he was 13. But and he became a teen father. And then the moment he turned 18, I had my daughter Naya. Here's Naya. She's 4 months right there, and I was 26. I had her. She was born in October of 2006, and I had turned 26 years old. So my brother says that my little brother says that he had his first child 6 months before I did. Most of my family were teen parents or had kids pretty young, um, and I wasn't sure I was going to have kids because I had to raise not just my siblings but a lot of nieces, mostly nephews, not so many nieces. Um, so yeah, I believe that raising children at such a young age has really informed the way I not only navigate the world, but also, the what I've been doing with my life. Um, the reason why I even wanted to go to college. My father and most of my family do not never learn how to read, or most of my elders, not my family, but my elders didn't get that chance to go to school. And my dad never learned how to read and write. My mom only got a grade education. And even currently, very few of my family members have graduated high school, and no one has really gone to college, and no one has had a master's. Uh, I except I did, and it was not intentional. I really just wanted to be a nurse midwife, and um, but I never imagined that would happen. It was just like, well, that's what you have to do to become a nurse midwife. Um, but I want to talk about my sister Alicia. I think I was sharing earlier. She's the reason I became a nurse midwife, because um and I never knew I wanted to be a midwife. Like in high school, I didn't know. Um, when I found out that I had the opportunity to go to college, I had no idea what to study. I I just knew that I loved languages. A brief story about myself: when I was a kid, and I can still be very shy, and also struggle with public speaking. But of course, I'm being very gentle and compassionate with myself, and I'm willing to speak right now. But when I was a little girl, well, first I was born with pretty bad tongue tie, because I remember when it got cut in Mexico, but I really didn't speak at all, and I was always like underneath my mom's skirt or under the table when she was making tortillas in the mornings. Or here's an image of mi abuelita. Those are the typical kitchens in the areas where I grew up, or probably all over Mexico or many other places. Underneath, there's a little hole where the little table is, and I was always there. I was always hanging out underneath the table with my mom. I would wake up early with her, and I was just always there. Um, so that was really hard. Um, I'm forgetting why I'm sharing that piece, because I was trying to say something about my sister Alicia, and she's the reason why I wanted to be a nurse midwife. Oh yeah, that I wanted to study languages at UCSC because I still have this complex with speech and language, and in high school I wanted to learn proper Spanish. You know, growing up in the countryside, people speak very different than in the cities. So I wanted to learn proper Spanish, and I wanted to learn how to read it and write it really well. English, because I grew up going back and forth between Mexico and the US. I just feel like even now, I just never really got to uh, speak it well or like dominate it well. So I thought I would learn Spanish, but those, you know, they had those Spanish for Spanish speaker classes, but those were a joke. The teacher would just let us watch MTV and go crazy in the class. So I ended up studying French, and I had a lovely French teacher, and it was so fun. So I said, I'm going to study languages. So I went to UCSC, here, the local UC Santa Cruz. And growing up, I never knew we had a university here. It just shows you how segregated Santa Cruz is. But that's another story. And that I really enjoyed studying language studies, and I also studied Latin American studies. And while I was going to school, I met a midwife, a local home birth midwife, Cindy Bacon. She's incredible. Right now, she no longer practices midwifery. She does craniosacral therapy. She became a regular customer at the coffee shop I was working at. I was a barista for 8 years. I love making espresso drinks, and we just connected. She has this very strong and powerful presence, and she has a Mexican ancestry. We hit it off, and I told her, I don't remember what I shared with her. All I remember is that she invited me to learn midwifery. She was teaching midwifery, home birth midwifery, at different students' homes, and she allowed me to attend free of charge. She thought I would be great, and that she wanted to bring more, you know, people of color into midwifery, and it was like the coolest thing I had ever experienced, because she was just so wise and intelligent and intuitive and strong, and she shares my mom's birthday. So I know I met her for a reason, and she has similar energy, fierce, a little intimidating actually too, but I think that was helpful. It made me take it seriously. But I was a senior at UCSC. I was working 3 jobs and raising 2 teenagers, and everyone was white, and there was just no one that I knew would be able to do a home birth for many reasons. So this fairy tale ended pretty quickly. I finished UCSC, and my siblings were not doing well. They were really things were getting worse. I was always at work. I was working in well, I graduated UCSC, and my first job was at a clean and sober high school. I was a substance use counselor at a clean and sober high school, and my siblings were using drugs and very involved in gangs. So I was doing that kind of work 24/7. So there's no way I could be on call for birth. So I felt really sad. I felt sad, but I also felt ashamed of quitting, because I'm not a quitter, but um I felt so bad that I felt bad because the Cindy allowed me to do this for free, and I didn't complete. And so I completely disconnected. I kind of forgot about midwifery. I was like, man, that was a dream. That's like in my real life, there's just like no way I can do this. So I forgot about it, and I was really enjoying my work, and I just kept getting, better paying jobs in the field of social work. And I even went for my master's in social work. A few years later, I was able to get a very good scholarship where I didn't have to pay, and I even got paid to go to school. But I dropped out because I just didn't believe in what they were teaching. Um, but that's a very important part of my journey into midwifery, because I would say that my two focus groups or passions are working with pregnant people with substance use. I am I have the X waiver, that's what we call it here in California. What that means is that I can manage medication assisted treatment for people in recovery, specifically from opiate uh, substance use disorder. But I have worked in many different aspects of substance use, and I will share about that a little bit later. But um, yeah, my childhood really informed what kind of not only birth work, but also just social justice and social work I wanted to do. And I didn't go back into midwifery until I had my daughter Naya in 2008. And I just wanted to share that, due to my being so busy or ignorance, I didn't realize that there was nurse midwives. I had no idea until I had a really nice social work job when I was pregnant, and I had nicer insurance, and there's this private practice of nurse midwives in Santa Cruz. So I was able to see nurse midwives for my care, and I was so excited, and I kind of thought the midwives would be like the midwife I had met, and that was not the case. Very short visits, very judgmental and stereotypical. I think one time they even assessed me for domestic violence and substance use, because although I was a social worker working in that field. One of the things I'll share is the way I was raised was very to be in a very you know I'm quiet, I'm very respectful with authority. Whether it's healthy or unhealthy, that's another story. I will also share a little bit more about just because it's related. So my full name, as I shared, is Maria Ramos Bracamontes, and in Santa Cruz County, um, the last name Bracamontes is very well known by everyone because of the history of drug dealing and gang involvement. Um, and I have had many relatives who have given birth on drugs and have ended up in, rehabs and, of course, in jail and all that. So the midwives knew my last name. uh Cops, whenever I get pulled over, and it hasn't happened any time it hasn't happened recently, but in the past I've been pushed around by cops when they see my last name. When I've gone to court for like traffic violations, they've like skipped me and mistreated me, and I'm like the most easygoing, calm person, but because that last name and what some family members have been involved with has really impacted my personal life, but it's also inspired my my work. Like, they are the reason why I want to do this work and why I focus on working with people with substance use, and also farm workers. but I'll share a little bit more about that later. Anyway, so Naya was born in the hospital. I was induced at 41 weeks, and I was not in a healthy relationship. When you grow up with kids raising kids, you know, I definitely identified as an orphan. And when you don't have that maternal or nurturing presence in your life, my abuelita was alive, but she was mostly in Mexico. Pregnancy can bring up all that trauma, and I was really having a very hard time, and it normally or usually, you know, it gets challenging the last few weeks of pregnancy. um I went into Naya's pregnancy undernourished, and I gained like 80 pounds. The midwives were freaking out, thinking I had preeclampsia or some gestational diabetes, but I didn't have any of that. I just started eating more, and I was miserable. I was suffering, and I was begging for an induction. And back then, 14 years ago, you know, things were a lot different, and they didn't want to, and I just showed up at the hospital, and they had agreed to do it. And then I got there, and it was so busy that they said, "You go home, we don't have space for you." And I was devastated, and I insisted to stay, and then I got abandoned. And then I gratefully gave birth within a few hours of the Cerrada placement. I think that I was probably just like terrified and holding her and just needed a little safety. I was not, like I shared, I was not in a healthy relationship. So it was very, very alone. But gratefully she was born. She was, she had the most beautiful and intense cry that I had ever heard. She's brought a lot of healing into my life. But that was 14 years ago. I was still, you know, I still hadn't done much healing. And it was after she was a year old. That nice job that I had when I was pregnant with her was not healthy at all. And I was miserable, and I decided to quit my job and go traveling. And Naya was like a year and a half, and I just went couch surfing, backpacking in Mexico for 2 months. It was just her. I had a little backpack for her, and just a little duffel bag with a few books, a little bit of clothes and diapers. And it was such a liberating experience because it was my own child. I was it was not my brother or my nephew. And I went to Mexico, and it was very hot in Mexico, and she got very, very sick in Veracruz. She became severely dehydrated, or it was a stomach bug. I think there's a lot of things going on, and I ended up needing to find emergency help. And it was so great that I was able to go to a doctor's house in the middle of the night, and he gave her an antibiotic, and it was so cheap. And and I realized that I wanted to know how to help my daughter. I realized I didn't know anything about how the body worked, or what to do if someone needs help, like what are the signs of dehydration, or all these things that you learn in nursing school. So after I came back from that trip, I had quit that job, and I actually went back to school to take nursing prerequisites because I thought it was important for me to learn about healing the body. And it was during the first few years of prerequisites that I don't know how it came together, if someone mentioned it or it clicked, but I do remember Now, it was the experience of having having my nephew be born in the context of parent use and being removed by Child Protective Services and having to go to foster care. That experience, that, you know, having a relative be placed in foster care due to whatever reason, but in this case, substance use, was just so heartbreaking. Is my sister and my nephew the reason why I knew I needed to be in the hospital to advocate for all those Black and brown babies that everyone, you know, villainizes and wants to separate from their families. So I started studying nursing, and it was really hard because I always sucked in math and science. I still do. I have dyslexia. English is my second language, and it was so hard. But what kept me going was this vision of the babies being able to stay with their parents. Anyway, so what I started, well, and then I started working in rehabs with pregnant women, and with teenagers, actually with teenagers. I first started working in rehabs with teenagers, and I just loved working in residential programs. I love teenagers, and eventually I started working at the rehab for pregnant women and mothers with their babies. And that's where I started my first doula collective. It was called the Santa Cruz Bilingual Doula Collective, and we served pregnant people with substance use and recovery and undocumented Spanish-speaking women. But before I share about that, I wanted to share my very first business card. This was like, I don't know, like 2009 or 10, and with this you know, this very powerful ancestral image, I went into the local health clinic to, you know, say, hey, here's my card. If any Spanish speaking woman want a doula, give them my card, or, you know, people in recovery. And I'll never forget, it was a white lady, you know, who was providing care for pregnant women there. She just freaked out. She's like, this is gonna scare the patients. And so that was, you know, one of my first traumas in my birth work journey in a very Western medical system. I felt awful. Of course, I didn't know any other birth workers of color anywhere. And of course, I threw the cards away and I made new ones with flowers, beautiful flowers. But then I realized how hard it is to do this alone. So I invited some friends to join and create a doula collective. So here we are, the very first friend, her name is Justine, very, very young, very, very young and very, very wise. And then it's me. And then the next person is a friend who is actually, we're no longer friends, but she is my partner's sister. And then my other friend, Crystal, she was providing childcare at the rehab for pregnant women. And so the four of us started a doula collective, the Santa Cruz bilingual doula collective, and it was so beautiful, all of it. It was so fun. Having meetings. We had like weekly meetings, and I should have shared with you, Cristal is an artist, so she made this beautiful image of a pregnant woman with like a spiral inside her stomach. And we worked so hard on our vision and mission statement, and our website was so beautiful. We had a Google phone, we had like a 24-hour line. We yeah, it was a really amazing doula collective. What we offered was beautiful, but when I started midwifery school, well, nursing school first, things kind of fell apart. But I was still missing this work, so later on, I started another doula program, and this one was called Collective Wings Perinatal Project. And this one I was able to, because with the Santa Cruz Doula Collective, we were all new doulas. We were just like trying this out on our own. Some of us took doula training, some didn't. But with this one, the Collective Wings Perinatal Project, and I should have shared more pictures of all the members, but I just wanted to share how we were able to combine not only the basic doula care, but also we did a lot of projects. Like we offered pregnancy photography, belly casting, like this image. We were doing educational groups. We were going into the rehab every week and leading women's circles and educational circles. And so many more things. We had more experienced doulas, and it was a lot of fun. I've always enjoyed working in teams. Also, it's more manageable, and like that, there's more, to select from. Like if the, they have more people to select from if the chemistry may not work. Or we were also doing shifts. Yeah, I love being a part of collectives, also organizing and leading collectives. And then, I'm a little bit out of order. Let's see. I guess I'll first share this. So I got accepted into UCSF in 2013. And it's also a very special moment. So my mother, she died in March 18th. Tomorrow will be her 33rd anniversary of her death. And then her birthday is March 23rd. So in 2013, I was very happy to be able to be in Mexico for her anniversary, so I can go to her grave, to the cemetery, to bring her flowers for the anniversary of her death and her birthday. And also my abuelita was sick that year, and also my brother Cesar, who was already deported, it was his birthday, the same day that my mom died is his birthday tomorrow. And he was there in Jalisco, so I was able to spend time with him and spend time with my abuelita in the hospital. And then it seemed like things were going well, and it seemed like she was going to recover. She had a surgery. I'm unsure what kind of surgery, but it was stomach related. But she died. My aunts and uncles who were there, because there's always at least half of her children were always there in the waiting room the whole time she was in the hospital. They told me that they came to tell them that she died the moment I was leaving the hospital and going straight to the airport. And this was very soon before I started nursing school. I didn't know anything about nursing yet. I really wish I knew. I had already done nursing school when I was in the hospital, because hospitals in other countries, and even here actually, can be all over the place. But my abuelita died right before I started nursing school, and that really impacted me, because I now I was really feeling like an orphan. My mom had died, and my abuelita had died, and I was just starting to connect with her about, being a partera. But while I was there, she did give me her blessing to start midwifery school. So that felt really good. And I was so heartbroken about her death, and I did not want to come back. I didn't want to return back to Mexico, because I was so angry and my grief was so big. I didn't want to see my aunts and uncles. Part of me knows that, they were not caring for her the way I would have wished she was being cared for. So I just prayed so hard to her, and that's when I started to connect more to my plant relatives, specifically flowers like pericon and bougainvillea. In Mexico, most homes have a lot of flowers, a lot of plants. And that's when I started to really receive guidance and support from the plants. It was after mi abuelita. I asked her, I said, please, I need you, and show me how I can honor you. And that's how she's showing up for me in las plantitas. So I am so grateful for to reconnect to the plants through my abuelita. So I did the nursing program. It took a year. It was traumatic. I barely survived. I was flunking all the time. I was always in trouble. I was always stereotyped. I was always picked on by professors. I was always late because I was living here in Santa Cruz and school was in San Francisco. So I was commuting, but I survived. And then the very first thing I did was I became a methadone dosing nurse. I worked as a methadone dosing nurse for a very long time. I had already worked in recovery for a very long time, and I had a special connection with people who were using opiates. And so it was natural for me. I have a lot of family members that would come into clinic, and I would get to see them every day, because most people get dosed every day. So that felt really, really important to me, and I loved my job. I worked 4 in the morning to like 10 a.m. or sometimes later. And then later on, I was able to work as a nurse practitioner once I finished midwifery school, going to UCSF and doing the CNM track. They also offer the women's health nurse practitioner, but technically I just have a general nurse practitioner license. I was able to work as a nurse practitioner at the local rehab, doing admissions for all substance use disorders, and that was amazing. But the next thing I want to share about is the one time I went to Maternidad La Luz. When I was getting ready to apply to midwifery school, I said, I just have to really experience what it's like to, bring life into this world, or help bring life into this world. And I was so grateful that they had those. I'm not sure what's going on now, because this was like 2010-ish. But back then they were allowing you to come for a visit, and I was there for 10 days, and it was so busy, and I was very happy that I got to meet Andrea Ruizquez from Partera Midwifery. She was teaching, she was on staff there, and we just clicked. And she, we worked together, and she taught me so much. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And I loved the birth center vibe, the whole, being able to come, give birth, and go home. But I was still very focused on my track. And then because nursing school was so hard for my heart and my spirit and my soul and my body and my mind and my emotional body, I was just so desperate for to connect to all the other ways of healing, not just the medical ones. And I was seeking for any opportunity to learn more traditional care, which is what I learned from, or is what I grew up with. In our hometown, we would just go to someone in town to heal us if something happened. For example, there was a Scorpio that bit me, and I was in bed for weeks, and I had all these women coming and doing all these, healings, limpias on me and curing me with different foods and herbs, and or if I had susto, they were just must do massage. And so that's the way I grew up with more traditional care. So I was like really needing that. And I remember in 2014 is when I met Tema Mercado. Everyone knows her, Matriz, La Matriz, Partera La Matriz, something like that. Sorry, Tema. But anyway, she came to San Jose and she taught one of her first sealing ceremony workshops. I'm not even sure, but there's an image of me and her and her friend Adriana, and that was just like so healing, so healing after a brutal year of nursing school. I was so happy that there was to meet other brown midwives on the journey. And that summer, I think that was over the summer after my very traumatic nursing school experience. And then I also got to go to Mexico. I took a workshop with Cristina Alonso from Luna Maya, who's very well known. I think that summer, I'm a little forgetful with dates, and so I apologize if I'm getting my dates wrong, but I went there, and I also went to visit another partera who I think is watching us, Nancy Maldonado in San Cristobal. And I was just so healing as well, because she also did the nurse midwifery track, and then she went to Mexico and was able to practice the way she wanted in Mexico. And that was just so inspiring. And I just needed to be around my people, and midwives, more like the home birth midwife I had met, midwives that can use all of their senses, all of their gifts, not just like be in this institution, in this system. So that was a part of my healing journey. And I have to say that even today, almost every day, I still question, but also long for the day that I don't have to be in this institution. But I know that most of us are giving birth in the hospital, and most of our people are still there, and that's why I'm still there. But I can't wait for the day for that to end. And then there was a Birthkeeper Summit in Berkeley in 2015, where I got to meet Gucci Cook. And oh my God, the moment I saw her, I was just bawling and bawling. If I could describe midwifery school in one word, would be tears. I was always crying. And Gucci Cook looks like my mom a little bit. And And I just wish there was more midwives like her everywhere. It was a very special moment to meet an elder midwife. I have also not had any mentors or elders in my life. A couple friend elders, but not in the birth world. So any little opportunity I get to connect with another indigenous midwife of color or elder is just, it just lasts for so long. That treat of that one moment, it just stays with me for a long time. So I'm so grateful that I got to meet her. And then this is my very original cohort. I was supposed to graduate in 2016, but I had to leave. I ended up quitting school, but it turned to just be that I took a year off. Um, it was just too much. It was just too traumatic being in the hospital. I was at the General Hospital in San Francisco, and coming from a background of being undocumented for half of my life. You know, I shared how I had to hide from landlords, social workers, like white people. It was so traumatic being in the hospital with all the you know, the patient population similar to where I work now, of undocumented Central American pregnant people and families, and the whole hierarchy and power dynamics, all the things that intersect in the hospital during birth, which is like the most sacred time in a person's life. It was just so triggering and traumatic. You know, it was mostly white midwives. Um, and I just gave up. I was like, is this too hard? It was so painful. I was broken. I was broken down many, many times, like on the floor, broken. Uh, mm, you know, failing a few classes sometimes. Um, so I just gave up. I didn't want to give up my dignity and respect, self-respect, and so I quit. But gratefully, I think that's when I went to Chiapas in Mexico. I'm getting a little confused, but yeah, I went to Mexico. That's when I went to San Cristobal de las Casas. I remember now. And it was just so good to take my daughter Naya and travel again. I took her for, I think it was 3 weeks, and went to Mexico City, to Chiapas and Playa del Carmen. And you know, I was doing the collective wings, and that was really nourishing. I was able to find all these things that were nourishing. I was working as a methadone dosing nurse, and I started feeling stronger. And then the program was really supportive in me, and they wanted me to come back. So I did, and I was able to start a group of nurse midwife students of color. So, and I organized some gatherings, and here is one. And the program director, she's still the current director, Kim Do, and she's also very involved in ACNM, the Association of the American Association of Nurse Midwives. And there's other midwives here, like Jaisha, who just started Black Centering in Oakland. Yeah, there's there's Ana Delgado, who was my preceptor at the General. The other thing that I was able to do while I took a year off was go to my first MANA conference. Okay, yes. Um, my very first MANA conference was very special because I knew that Patricia Gonzalez was going to be there, and I really wanted to meet her and attend her workshop. And Rhonda, I think I crashed in your hotel room the night before you had to leave, so we never got to meet. But that's when they had a very beautiful workshop for Indigenous birth workers, and I got to meet a lot of Indigenous birth workers. That was my very first time connecting to the US Indigenous birth workers, and I got to meet Sandra Iturbide from El Paso and Maria Rivera from LA, who's now living very close by in Aromas. And it was so healing to be around Indigenous and Brown midwives and other midwives of color, and to be in out of hospital birth, where that was the focus, not hospital birth. Yeah, it was really sweet. And then when I went back to UCSF, I was very grateful to this, my maestra and preceptor, Ana Delgado. She's the midwifery director at the General, and she offered to precept me because I wanted a preceptor of color, and she's one of the only ones. There's her, and then there's another partera back then, Carmen, and then another male Chileno partero. I forgot his name. But anyway, this was during the whole Standing Rock times, 2016, I believe. And there's a bunch of events, and I feel like it was the first time I was able to be myself in the hospital setting. Anna allowed, with her, I felt safer being who I was. And that really helped me being able to complete my education at UCSF. But while I was a student, I was still running the collective and also organizing doula trainings. So I organized my very first doula training, I think the summer of 2016, maybe. And the focus was birth justice and also traditional birth work. And that was very, very sweet. You know, part of why I love teaching is because I love working with other people who also teach and hold a lot of knowledge. So that was the very first group. And then later on, I taught, and that was just a one weekend one, you know, and I taught a lot about navigating child protective services. I focused a lot on substance use and in pregnancy and how to navigate child protective services. Also, like, you know, trauma informed care and grief work, things like that. And then, well, I had already had Caracol, so this was in like 2018, and then I taught a 2-weekend traditional Indigenous community birth worker training. Those 2 weekends, the first weekend was all about birth, second weekend all about the postpartum, and that was so sweet. Yeah, it was really, really sweet. So I just wanted to show how important it is to me that as I learn, I also share, and I want all the women in my community to have access to this knowledge. So really, I knew that although I was the one taking the test and showing up, like, this was for everyone. And it's just like really has helped me keep going and to nurture my spirit as I go. I got a scholarship to go to I'm forgetting the name, International Confederation of Midwives, I think. And I got to meet Indigenous midwives from all over the world, specifically Latin America. And that was just so special. Here's another picture of the MANA conference in Long Beach, which was also so special. I'm forgetting right now what year. I think it was 2017 because I was pregnant with Caracol. There you are, Rhonda, Stephanie, Joanna, Pakistani, Tema, Mo, Amber, Roxana, La Rosa Midwifery, Luz, and I'm forgetting everyone's name, but that was so sweet to feel included. But I felt like an imposter because I was still, you know, not licensed, also not practicing in home birth, although home birth is really important to me. And it's what I believe in, what I believe that we should well, I believe that everyone should have the choice to birth where they want, but home birth is very special. And then here's an image of the birth center, the staff at the birth center in Santa Rosa. That's where I was able to complete my very last clinical rotation, or we call it integration. It was so special because I was pregnant with Caracol, and being pregnant and attending births is just very you just really feel the pregnant people and the labors and the babies when they're born just like a little deeper level, because like you're already thinking about that and you're already feeling all those things. And what was so special about this place is that although we were practicing in the birth center, we had hospital privileges at the local hospital. So whenever we had to transfer a patient to the hospital, all I had to do was call the L&D room and say, hey, I have this situation, we need to transfer to the hospital, get everything ready. And I would show up and I would continue being the midwife for this family that had a baby coming, unless they had an emergency and needed a doctor. Like I said, I didn't graduate. Well, I finished classes in 2017, so I had a totally different cohort, and they were all pretty young and pretty white. But I had my sister Asmara, who's also originally from Santa Cruz, so I was really sweet, and we both have kids the same age, so that it just felt like such a victory to finish with my sister Asmara and single moms. And I refused to go to the ceremony, the blessing of the hands that my cohort had organized. I organized my own blessing of the hands with Maestra Patricia from Oakland, and that was so special. It was at the beach where we had a temazcal and then a ceremony at the beach, and it was just what I needed. And that year was extra special because my daughter finished elementary school. So I was finishing my master's in nursing and she was finishing elementary school. And I was a few weeks pregnant with Caracol in that picture. Something else I wanted to mention was I officially took a curandero toolkit class in Oakland with Maestra Atava. I thought it would be important to take to learn what to take a class. While I was going to school, I was also going to Oakland to take a curandera class with Atava, and that was just so healing. That really helped me. And what I loved about taking that class is that what it really taught me is that I already knew these things because I grew up with them. And so it gave me permission, it empowered me to have confidence in myself, my knowledge, but also to, share in the community. And then when I gave birth at home, because after my first baby, I had her in the hospital, and then being able to give birth at home, like my abuelita and my mom, it was the most incredible feeling in the whole world. I was able to have a really beautiful, healthy pregnancy. I was seeing my comadre Andrea in Oakland. She was doing my prenatal care. Combined with myself, I had the tools I needed to listen to the baby, and I could do my blood work and that kind of thing. But I had never given birth at home And so, and I hadn't given birth spontaneously. I was induced, so I didn't really, it was like my first time giving birth again. And it was just all so beautiful the whole morning. It was a very short labor, and being able to go so within, you know, think I had everything I needed. I did call Andrea once I realized that the contractions were not going to go away, and everything just went so fast and so smoothly. And I experienced what a lot of people talk about. Now I can say I know what that is. Like, I believe the term is fetal ejection reflex, when you know, you reach this point of intensity, and then your mind and your spirit goes into the universe looking for your baby, and then you come back down with your baby, and your baby's born. And there's like, I didn't even feel, you know, I didn't feel anything except all of a sudden my baby was in my arms. That was so magical, and so mind altering. It was the most beautiful experience. It gave me so much confidence and strength. And it reaffirmed that giving birth with full autonomy in your home with your people, whoever you want to be around, no medical equipment, just me and my partner, and the water and the music and the tea and the piña, all the fruit, like all the things that I wanted. I got to do whatever I wanted. It was just so magical. So after I gave birth, I had to complete a research paper for school. So I finished school and I finished clinicals, but I still had to do a research paper, and it was due for Caracol's due date. And so I ended up not getting my degree until April of 2018. So that meant that I couldn't take my exam for a while. So I started teaching. I decided to start teaching sealing ceremony workshops because I just wanted everyone to have them. I wanted to have, you know, friends to do them with, and I wanted everyone to get their sealing ceremony, and that was really, really sweet. I was able to do this while I was studying for my exam, my licensing exam. So here's a picture of me doing that. And also, it was so sweet. I taught 3 workshops, and different people from different backgrounds came from different parts of the country, and I plan to continue teaching sealing ceremonies when we're able to meet in person again, hopefully this summer or later. That's it. To me, it is a way for us not only to heal our bodies and our wombs, but also uh, our babies and our ancestors, and really just our community of women. And when I'm doing this work is when I feel the most connected to my mother and my grandmother, and I and these are the ways where I feel like, you know, I mother myself and other women, and just remember our traditions and work with the our plant relatives that bring so much healing. And this is really what I want to do in the long run, once I'm done with um, my current job at the hospital. Here is just a picture of me. My congratulations passing my exam. I've only been licensed for like a year, and it is going to be 2 years this summer. It's going to be 2 years this summer, so I still feel very new. It took a very long time for me to get hospital privileges down here in Watsonville. Watsonville is a farm worker community here in Santa Cruz County. I will get to work with my compañera, Magdalena Ruiz, who's also from my hometown. I didn't know her, and I met her at UCSF, and we're from the same hometown, and she's a nurse practitioner, um, and that's been very, very special. I wanted to share a little bit more about my work here in Watsonville with Campesinas. I finally stopped working in substance use. I feel like I closed that chapter of my life, and now I'm 100% focused on campesinas, because that's where I come from. People who work the land, indigenous people from Mexico, and that's where the most health disparities are. That's where the most racism is. Our babies are still being not only taken by CPS, but also immigration detention centers. And yeah, I really working with undocumented people is where I need to be, because there's so much trauma. There's trauma and everywhere there's trauma, but the physical trauma of growing up illegal, feeling invisible, and being ignored and not having access to basic needs is just incredibly traumatic. And it's taking my whole life to heal, and to feel like I belong no matter what. Gratefully I do have papers now, but I'll never forget what it feels like not to. And my whole reason for wanting to work in the hospital is, of course, I still do work with some babies, some pregnant people in recovery that are Spanish speaking, but also with campesinas. The level of disrespect and mistreatment in the hospital is just horrific. So I want to help not only give them the best sacred care that they can, but also remember that they can do this, to bring it back to them, to say, hey, like, you and your ancestors have been doing this forever. We're the ones that have so much to learn from you, and to be able to for them to be able to attend each other's births. So I actually started teaching trainings in Spanish, doula trainings in Spanish. And I'm also planning to start teaching doula trainings in Spanish, but also with Mixteco translators. Here in the fields of Santa Cruz, of Santa Cruz County, the strawberry field is a lot of women from, or families from Oaxaca, specifically from the Mixteco community. And it's been very, very special, because it's in Mexico and here, they're the most oppressed indigenous community, but they are so so disempowered and so deprived of basic needs. And I can't wait to bring more support for them. So I got my job before I got licensed, and a month after I started working, I got pregnant again, and then the pandemic began. I had also just started attending births at the hospital when the pandemic began, but because I was pregnant, and they had no idea what was going on with the pandemic. It was a mutual decision for me to like stop attending births. And so I dedicated I was still working in clinic, but I just was feeling so awful about the whole experience with who was getting stimulus checks and who was getting help. And undocumented farm workers were the ones that were still having to show up to work and not getting any help from the state. And from my experiences working in clinic, I knew that the woman needed a lot of support and had so many health issues going on. And one of them was heavy bleeding, menstrual disorders. And I always wished I could just give them all like a bag of pads or give them things. And my way of being able to do that was starting this project, the Campesinx Womb Care Project. I've been able to, it's been going on, it's going to be a year now. I think our first distribution was in May, so it's going to be a year in May or April, I'm not even sure, but it's been such an amazing way to show up for my community. We don't only provide menstrual care products, but also herbal remedies such as teas and womb salves and cash. We're able to provide in each bag a $20 bill. Also, we provide rent assistance and other things. We have medicine making days, and that's very, very nourishing to me. And we're starting to build very strong relationships with the campesinas, and it's just turning out to be a beautiful experience. And my real dream and goal is to create a birth center for them, where they have access to everything that they want, and where they will get treated with dignity, respect, and honor. And I know I need to wrap it up, so I will just wrap it up with, I had my second home birth. I was due with Yakumiski for my 40th birthday, and it was such an intense experience. One, because it was unexpected pregnancy. Two, because I found myself pregnant in turning 40, and that's when my mother died. She died a few days before her 40th birthday, and although I'm healthy and I didn't develop, gestational hypertension or diabetes, my physical being was still terrified in one way. I thought maybe I was gonna die in birth, like my mom did, and it was a pandemic, so I had very limited access to any type of care. I ended up doing a lot of my care, and this little one, Yaku, and I named her, her middle name is Ermelinda, like my mother, because I just knew it was her. I knew that my daughter is here to continue helping me heal and to mother me. And here she is. A few weeks ago, she's now 7 months old. And here is my whole family. Yaku is on the bottom, then Caracol, he's 3 now, and my very, very loving and nurturing partner. I think I met him right after my abuelita was born, so I really do believe that she helped me meet him so that he could also provide some of the loving care that I need. And I just started attending births again. I've had 3 shifts, and it's crazy. Even I still, every day that I'm there, have all kinds of emotions. Most of them is get me out of here. Just kidding. Well, yeah, actually, but I know I have to be there because that's where the people are. I want to be where the people are. I am committed to the people more than to, the place. And it's been such an honor. I have had 4 amazing births so far, all Mixteco babies. Yesterday I had 3 baby girls be born into my hands. And it feels so good to be able to bring a little bit of respect and dignity and sacredness to the birth of these indigenous babies being born. And I'm learning so much about the Mixteco culture and building relationships, and it feels so good to be able to be someone who can advocate for them in that space and demand respect for them and all the best that that setting, the hospital setting, has to offer. But it's really, really hard, and I don't think I can do it for very long. But I know it's important. And while I'm there, I'm still I'm being precepted. It'll take a few months for me to be able to practice on my own, but I'm really hopeful that while I'm getting experience, I'll be working towards this dream and goal of having our own space for indigenous babies to be born, and brown and queer and everyone that is not treated right by the white supremacist system that we live in. Thank you so much. I didn't expect to take all this time. I hope that I was able to offer anything that felt very good to your heart and your spirit. Thank you, and I'm available for support if anyone is considering this crazy partera journey life. And thank you, Rhonda, for inviting me to share today.
Thank you so much, Maria. I did change the setting so that people can unmute themselves if they wanted to speak in any way. But to just sum up today's presentation though, if you had someone in front of you who was needing, to do all of this work when they're carrying the very real, felt, visceral reality of being a child of someone who died in childbirth, what would you say to them? How would you summarize all of these different ways that you've, given it power and, found your ways in different journeys? And I loved there's so many stories that you started, in this presentation, and they were all powerful.
And Rhonda, that's the whole thing I was supposed to talk about, and I didn't.
You did.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
You did perfectly. And like I said, it's your space. I'm just saying that there was a lot of richness. And I just, if someone sees this flyer and clicks on this Zoomcast, what would you say to them?
So thank you for reminding me, because it's just such a part of every moment. And it's just this inner knowing that death is everywhere at every moment. And interestingly, it shows up for me physically every time I do something new. Every time I start at a new place, not every time, but most times, there's a fetal demise. A year ago, when I started the hospital, my very first day on LND, there was a fetal demise. Also, as a student, it always shows up as having to catch dead babies. Yesterday there was 2 second trimester fetal demises, and I can never forget it. And I feel like it's it's a constant surrendering and remembering that with life comes death, and it doesn't mean it's nothing bad. It's just life happening. It's just like life cycles completing themselves. And I think that it is what has given me so much strength to keep going and not being, I'm not afraid of dying, or of birth. I think that one of the uh, you know, problems or issues or pandemics in birth or in the world is fear. And I've had to live with fear, whether it was by growing up undocumented and having to hide or run from La Migra, to having to help someone who's overdosing, or having to drive looking for my brother who was, shot 7 times, and knowing he could be dead, like always facing death. Just knowing that at every moment, any one of us, including myself, can be gone. And so living from this space of knowing that you never know when someone's last moments will be, makes me live to the fullest and makes me go for it. I go for the, I welcome whatever it is when I'm, a pregnant person is ready, the baby has come down. I'm ready for whatever's going to come out. No panic. All I know is that my job is to hold sacred space and to do everything that is in my power to help this person, this situation, be well, be whatever needs to be. And that's really the main thing, that growing up without a parent, and specifically now in my childbearing time, growing up with, or being pregnant and giving birth, knowing that like death is it could be a death instead of a birth, where I can birth death, has just given me so much power and wisdom and strength. And I feel so grounded in my ancestors, and even in this duality that giving life is. And I'm just so grateful, because that's not something that any preceptor taught me. Most of my preceptors were terrified if they saw a little bit more bleeding, or if they saw this, or whatever reason. There's so much fear in birth. And I have been able to, not have that be a part of my experience, even in moments where, healthy fear is, it's important to be a little healthy, to have a little fear, just so that you're alert, just enough adrenaline to be like, okay, I need to prepare myself for this situation, but never where I just go away and, give up before I even try to help. That's all I will say. Thank you for the reminder to talk about this.
I know things like this can't ever be separate from just all the rest of your life and your journey. But I thank you for what you have brought and what you've shared and the vulnerability with it. It was beautiful. So we are at time, but it's also okay. We'll end when you're ready for us to end, but I did just want to open up if there were any words that anyone would like to share. Like I said, I did change the setting so that people can unmute themselves if they would like to.
Anybody?
Hola María. Hola, hola querida María. Hello María. My name is Nancine. I live about 45 miles from Maria, also on the central coast of California, in land of the Salinan, and also like territory of the Ohlone nation. And I want to just say, how I saw your story, the really strong story that you shared with us about your mom leaving this, this earth, this terrain, and joining all of our ancestors in the spirit world. Um, and the way that I saw it is that I really think that your mom did pass, did make it to the other side after giving birth. I feel, I don't know, I felt that. No, I felt that she did have her baby and your 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 little brother, and that she was able to connect with him, that she was able, how in our culture and other indigenous cultures as well, here present in this Zoom, is that we believe that mothers, go out there and through the spirit to the spirit world, and they bring back their baby, that spirit of their baby that is going to be in this terrain, in Mother Earth, walking and taking life. And she had to do that. No, she had to go over there, and she had to come and bring your brother here, your brother's spirit. And in doing that, I do believe um, that she had to be there to root, that spirit into your brother's body, and therefore, she was still alive. But unfortunately, we live, this is a society now. I'm coming back, I've been here for what, 15, 16 months now in the United States, having lived in indigenous lands, in Mexico, southern Mexico. We live in a society where death is not accepted, and birth, normal birth, guiding and nurturing and letting normal birth happen doesn't happen here. It's not believed in, and it's not supported. And unfortunately, a lot of C-sections happen, and during those cesareans, the pulmonary embolism is really it's one of those consequences. And so I believe that your mom did have the opportunity to see your baby brother here in this world, taking life, and then going into that spirit world, because I think that there was an exchange as well, maybe, an exchange of spirits of like, you're going to stay here, but I'm going to be leaving. Maybe there was a need for that exchange to happen. And I just want to, I just wanted to give you what I envisioned and what I thought. I don't know what came to me of that story, Maria. And thank you for sharing that, because that's so hard. That's so hard to talk about death, to talk about death in childbirth, to talk about death when there's life happening, when there's life taking place, and we don't talk about that a lot. And that's really, also like our responsibility and our work as well as a midwife, to guide that, to honor also that presence, of that spirit world in birth, but then to also have conversation, and also to have limits to that door of, making sure that nothing is, switched like that, that when it's not necessary, um, and unfortunately, it does happen here and there, and we just have to honor that time and space, that it was time, and that it was the space for that to happen. And in indigenous culture, we do respect also death, and we're connected to death, and we know that we are going to be dead, in that spirit world at one point in our lives, when our lives end here. And it's just like this 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 balance, no, of life and death in midwifery work and in our work in guiding birth or guiding life into this world. And I would just want to thank you for your story, because it's, you know, it's a really difficult story to talk about, to live again, and then to comprehend, you know, why did it happen, and you know what could have happened and what could have been done, but we never know, right, Maria? And well, I just want to thank you so much for that story and sharing that with us. Thank you.
I'd like to say something, just keep it short. Well, first, Lazo Kamati, thank you, Maria, for sharing your story. It really resonated a lot with me, especially as a granddaughter of a bracero, and so much of your migration journey and the intergenerational trauma. And also, you mentioned a lot about the what comes up a lot is the stolen babies and separation, and migration, you know, with Amigra. And I just, it really brought to light like how much that is prevalent in my own lineage too. And overall, just like the idea of being separated and how that for us plays out, just different triggers that are like, I just find it very interesting that we don't talk about this enough, and yet it is so woven into our lineage and our lived experiences. And so I really appreciate that you were sharing your story, because I don't think we share our stories enough and really feel comfortable doing that from the heart, you know, and conversing with your heart as you do that, and finding that voice. So I really commend you for what you are doing. And it also, what you said about the Tlazolteo card really hurt. And I just want to say that thank you for everything you're doing. And the reason why the Tlazolteo kind of hurts is because that's the Yausiwa, the warrior. We all carry a chimali for being birthers, you know, for birthing, and capturing our spirit child and birthing them earthside. And the sacrifice that we go through to do that voluntarily, it's like our sense of martyrship, you know. And your mother is a Cihuateotl, sacred, you know, who carries the sun from the zenith to the west and to the sunset. And you know, before there were like warriors who were in battle that were bestowed that task, and from the Xochitl battles. And I'm just thinking about today, modern day, with the implications of our battles are different, but they are still there, and we are fighting, and we are disempowered in our battles. So when you say that you found a lot of parents disempowered and how that made you feel, when we come from a nation of warriors, it really resonated with me. And I just want to let you know that I see what you're doing, and I think that you are permanently a part of us in that way, you know. So, and I guess that would mean your entire lineage and all those before you and who come after. So I'm in Tataviam lands in California, Tonga lands, and so all the way over here, I just want to let you know that you have moved somebody who, and I just want to continue to do the Yausiwa work that, you know, that you do, although I'm not a midwife, but pursuing lactation profession. But, you know, I carry this chimali with pride, seeing others like yourself carry it too.
Gracias.
Hi, Maria. You have such an amazing story, and I feel really blessed and really privileged to have heard some more of it right now. And, listening to you talk, and, I was thinking, for you going through this whole process of sharing your story again, I was wondering, for you, like, if you've done any reflection right now for where you are in life, if you had any advice that you would give to your younger self, or when you started on your journey of becoming a midwife, like if you have anything that you would say to that person.
I probably would have tried to connect with my mother, my grandmother, and other women earlier, to seek comfort in other women. I was very disconnected from any maternal figure. So really just connecting with and embracing, the feminine, and having more self-compassion. I think it would have been easier. I think that's the main thing.
I think you're great. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments before we move into a closing? Maria, do you feel called to do a closing, or how would you like us to end today?
If anyone else was called to do a closing, I would love that so much. It feels so good to have, you here with me, and I would love to take this opportunity to have someone else close for me if you feel called. If not, maybe you, Rhonda. It would feel so good to me if someone else closed.
Okay, let me just give a moment. I mean, I am not a native Spanish speaker, and so if there is anyone, who could speak in your mother tongue, I always would love that. So I'll just give a moment and see if anyone feels called to do so. Okay. Thank you, Creator, for bringing this wise woman and the stories of her lineage, of her journey, of her passions, of her stories, of her ways that she has taken pain and brokenness, and all of the ways that she learned strength from each stage of life and each challenge, and has turned it into this powerful, powerful way of being in service to the world, to community, to women, to our girls, to children, to families, to all of us. I want to thank and send prayers and blessings to her sweet mama today. I honor her. I honor the life she lived. I honor all of the beautiful children that she gave birth to and brought earthside. And I honor her, and in giving one more way to have her daughter be able to share the story of her life and her death, and how that began this path of birth work. I want to also honor all of the teachers, all of those who encouraged the journey, all of those who were supports, all of those who just sat beside you and open up space for more and more and more people to be able to take in all the gifts that you have to offer. Oh.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you,
Oh,
everybody.
Mateo, thank you.
Okay, have a beautiful evening, everybody.